Hey, Dr. Karp here. Welcome to my channel where my goal is for you to become your own authority in health. And today we're going to be talking about the premature skin aging that is the result of blue light. Now, we're going to do this a little bit different from the other presentations, and we're going to start out with a very quick 5 to 10 minute summary. This will give you everything that you need to know to understand why it's important to avoid blue light. And then, if you're interested in sticking around, we'll go through a little bit more detail in terms of the science by talking about general concepts about light in the skin, talking about UV and how UV and blue light sort of are related in some way, breaking down sort of skin structures, types of electromagnetic radiation, what oxidative stress is, what is the stress that is actually caused, what is this stress, what's going on in the skin. We'll talk a little bit about the circadian rhythm. And then there'll be some cool images that will share a little bit of deeper information and will sort of solidify the concepts, I think, from what we've talked about. So let's jump into the summary so that you can get a more practical understanding of this. Now, why it's important, why it's concerning, how it damages the skin, and what you can do about it. Now, why it's important is because you're getting damage to your skin. And that damage to your skin is unfortunately causing you to age prematurely. And of course, that's important because there are actually real economic and social effects of premature skin aging, from different social aspects, social prospects, to real economic ones where, unfortunately, they've shown younger looking people appear to get better job prospects, unfortunately. So there are real economic and social effects to preventing premature skin aging. And if we're doing a reversal of this in a natural way, then you're improving your skin health. And your skin health is important. It provides the barrier between you and the environment. Now, it's concerning because LED lights and screens of all types, from the TV to your laptop to your cell phone, all of these are emitting blue light. This blue light, it's called high energy visible light. And more exposure is happening every year because people are using these LED lights in their homes. During the Trump administration, they allowed incandescent bulbs to be sold again, but that's probably going to be repealed. Incandescent bulbs are so much healthier for you. They do not emit even a fraction of the blue light that LED lights do. So I would say it's important for you, if it's important for you, that you switch back to incandescent bulbs, believe it or not. Now, sun obviously has a lot of blue light in it. The question is, how much do we get in comparison? Well, they do these studies basically by measuring the energy coming out of devices. And most of the studies actually show that it varies, honestly, in terms of the way they do these, but something on the order of 7 to 10 hours of screen time is about equal to 2 hours of blue light from the sun. Now, we most historically have gotten most of our blue light from the sun. But now that we are inside, unfortunately, and we're getting all this exposure, we're getting a decent amount of this. If we're in front of our screens, if we're putting our cell phone up to our face, all of these things are going to lead to premature skin aging. So let's talk a little bit about how it damages the skin. Let's close this a little bit so I don't give you all the details right off the bat. But keep in mind that here's basically the summary. I want to make this as easy as possible. It turns out that when light goes through your skin, it's got to hit something. In other words, it's like the light goes through, it gets absorbed by something in your skin. That's what I mean, that it hits it. It gets absorbed by something, and then it creates what are called reactive oxygen species. What you really need to understand about this is it's creating a stress in the skin. It's causing something to form that is causing stress in the skin. Now, in this case, it's being absorbed by something called flavin, which is very much similar to riboflavin, which is a type of B vitamin. Now, that is what is sort of selectively absorbing this blue light. And when it hits the flavin, unfortunately, it's generating a stress. And that's what we call reactive oxygen species. Now, normally, this stress is going to lead to inflammation. And this is what's called oxidative stress. Now, we've all heard of antioxidants. Well, our skin has natural antioxidants in it. In other words, normally, you have these antioxidant defenses. And these basically are overloaded when you're getting this stress, which is going to lead to collagen damage. Now, in blue light, it's actually not producing a huge amount of this oxidative stress. What it's doing is something almost more pernicious. It's producing these low levels of these radicals, these oxygen radicals. And it's sort of like flying under the radar with this low level and causing there to be collagen damage and activating enzymes that end up breaking down collagen, breaking down the infrastructure of your skin. What happens if you take away the scaffolding, of a building? It collapses. In other words, the same thing happens in your skin. It collapses when the infrastructure, when the scaffolding of the skin, it starts to fall, and that causes wrinkling. So that's one of the things that it does. It also, unfortunately, penetrates deeper into the skin than ultraviolet light B and ultraviolet light A, which means that it is going into the area where the collagen is, where that scaffolding of your skin is. So it's even getting deeper than the ultraviolet light A, and certainly deeper than the ultraviolet light B. If you stick around later for the deeper part of this talk, we'll go into understanding that a little bit more. Additionally, if you have darker skin types, it's actually this sort of stress that's happening in the skin is actually leading to hyperpigmentation. So you're getting dark spots. That's what's happening. So in addition to the wrinkling and this damage to the scaffolding of your skin, if your skin is just a little bit darker than someone who is very pale, then you naturally, that is, you're going to have an increased risk for getting dark spots as well. Now, what's really crazy, and it's something that I wasn't aware of until actually a few months ago, where I came across several of the articles, but we know that blue light interferes with circadian rhythm of the body. What we didn't know is that almost every part of your body has its own circadian rhythm. In other words, it has its own rest and repair and active cycle. So the same thing happens in your skin. Believe it or not, your skin runs on its own clock. And what happens is normally at nighttime, you are essentially repairing your skin. And if you don't have that repair, in other words, if you're tricking your skin into thinking that it's daylight hours, it's not going to go into its natural repair and restorative process. So what happens is it leads to what's called more intrinsic aging. In other words, than sort of, quote, natural aging that's happening from just being alive and from the insults that we get from being alive. This intrinsic aging is actually going to speed up because your skin is always in the alert mode. It's not going into this repair mode. And this leads to defects in barrier function, which is what your skin is there for. And when you don't have good barrier function, your skin doesn't look as vibrant as it normally does. It becomes less smooth, and it just becomes a little bit unhealthy looking if you're not going through this repair. Now, many of you probably have gone through the experience of being up late at night and maybe doing several nights of going out late at night, and your skin just looks sallow and it's not plump. All of these things, most of us have had this experience. Well, if you're exposing your skin to blue light all the time and it can't repair itself and restore itself like it's designed to do, you're going to get these defects in the barrier function and less smoothness of the skin. So in addition to wrinkling and hyperpigmentation, we also have sort of a decrease in the youthful appearance of the skin, as well as sort of a less smooth, more rough-looking appearance to the skin. So what can you do about it? Well, you can do a lot of things, actually. And what I like to say is you certainly can block it. But I like to say that you can reduce, replace, and restore your skin. So by doing these things to repair. So first of all, you can block. There are sunblocks. Unfortunately, zinc oxide, which is the sunblock I recommend for most people because it protects against ultraviolet light A and ultraviolet light B and a little bit of visible light. Unfortunately, it doesn't block blue light all that well. And you need something like iron oxide. Unfortunately, iron oxide is not that cosmetically appealing. It's tinted. It's going to be tinted. Most tinted sunblocks or foundations do have some iron oxide, and they do provide some protection. But for someone who wants to protect themselves on a daily basis, sometimes iron oxide is not the most cosmetically appealing. So that leads us to several different things. The first is to reduce. I mean, the best thing we can do is try to reduce our screen time and reduce our exposure to LED lights. The next is to replace. Well, you can replace the lights in your home. As I said, incandescent bulbs are available again at the recording time of this. I do believe the Biden administration probably will be repealing this, and you probably won't be able to get incandescent bulbs again, but they are available now. And I would recommend that if you have lights that are easy to replace, then I would consider changing to incandescent bulbs, because they are much healthier for your overall health and, of course, in this case, for your skin. You can also filter blue light. There are screen filters. Your phone has a setting that will reduce the amount of blue light on it, as does most computer screens. I use an app called Flux on my computer that will reduce the blue light. I do take this very seriously because, as I said, every year it seems we're going to be getting more and more exposure to this blue light. The next thing you can do is you can have topical agents and dietary strategies. Let's talk about the dietary strategies. You know, I had a patient with a skin problem. I put her on a special diet that was very high in vegetables, very, very high. And she came back, and her macular degeneration essentially was virtually gone. I wasn't treating her for that. I got a call from her ophthalmologist, and a lot of what we see, damage in the retina, is related to blue light. And dietary strategies and supplements for macular degeneration have actually shown to have some effect, and certainly in the case of my patient. So the same thing can be said for the skin in a certain sense. So dark leafy green vegetables are always going to be your best bet, and they are going to provide some protection. Of course, unfortunately, you know, in order to get this, you need to eat a good half pound to pound of leafy greens per day, which is what this patient was doing. And, you know, anything will help. Of course, you should be improving your diet as much as you can. But it's not going to be the end all be all. You're going to need some other protection. And that's why I go through this: reduce, replace, and restore. The next is topical agents. And, you know, the question is can something so artificial like blue light actually have sort of a natural solution? That's sort of always what I ask myself. And in this case, we have to think about blue light in a very particular way. It comes in the sun. So it's not like it's something that we are seeing new for the first time. What we're seeing new for the first time is that we're not getting light in its full spectrum inside. We're getting it selectively as blue light. Now, plants have evolved all kinds of mechanisms in order to protect themselves against ultraviolet light and blue light. Therefore, we can look to nature to try to find a plant that is going to help with this. And there are plants that have developed these unique defenses that essentially scavenge these low-level damage that is happening with the blue light. Remember, we spoke about sort of it's like this inflammation that's flying under the radar in a sense. And quite frankly, I'm not satisfied with the current solutions on the market. And I am actually working with a skin formulator to come up with these plants. Actually, we found the plants. I actually don't want to mention them in this particular talk because we are going to go forward and create this product because I do really feel there is a need for this protection. Now, if you're interested in being part of the test for this product, please do contact me at this email address, drkarpjm@gmail.com, where we essentially have finished the formulation with these incredible plants that, you know, basically have evolved this unique defense because there were, you know, essentially they exist in such an extreme environment with an enormous amount of sun. In very, very difficult circumstances and they thrive in that. They've developed these unique defenses that have actually been studied to help with the blue light damage. So if you're interested in sort of being a tester for this, we are looking for people, and contact me directly. All right, so we spoke about this. We spoke about why it's important, why it's concerning, how it damages the skin. Remember this low-level inflammation, this stress that essentially is you need to have something that is going to sop up this low-level inflammation and what we can do about it. Now, that's basically the summary. Now, let's dive deeper. Hope people stick around because I think this is really interesting science, and it also understands a lot about what's happening in the world today. Now let's understand light in the skin. And I spoke about this a little bit we sort of superficially covered this before. See, each wavelength of light, when it goes through the skin, it's going to be absorbed by something. It's going to hit something, and it's going to cause some sort of damage. Now, UVB and UVC, ultraviolet B and ultraviolet C, are actually directly hit the DNA. That's why they are directly associated with cancer, because they are actually affecting the DNA, which is causing DNA mutations that can lead to cancer if your body doesn't repair that DNA appropriately. Blue light, we spoke about, hits this sort of flavin, and UVA, and we should probably sort of move this here, also hits that flavin, but also it hits some others as well. And the blue light hits this flavin. So in other words, as it goes through the skin, it's going to hit something. Now this is the science behind laser therapy. For example, if you want to get dark spots to go away, you create a laser with the wavelength that's going to hit the frequency of light that is absorbed by that dark spot. And that's how it penetrates through the skin cells, and that it hits that particular pigment. Well, in this case, with UVB and UVC, it's going through and it's hitting the DNA just right off the bat. And with UVA and blue light, it's hitting this flavin. Now, let's break the skin down so we can have a little bit better understanding of this. We all know that there's an epidermis at the very top of the epidermis, sort of dead layer of skin, and then there are live cells, and then underneath the epidermis is the dermis. This is where you have collagen and elastin, and these are, as we said, the scaffolding of your skin, and they give it the youthful appearance. Now, we spoke about how UVA and blue light both damage these collagen fibers and create this abnormal elastin, which causes enzymes. Enzymes sort of digest things. So it's causing these MMPs, which basically degrade collagen, and then you form in repair new collagen, but that new collagen is often abnormal. It's not the same type of collagen, and that forms wrinkles. That's one of the things that causes wrinkles. Another thing that causes wrinkles, and of course we could go through a whole 2-hour lecture on that, is elevation of blood sugar. So we do need to be careful of our blood sugar, because when our blood sugar goes up too much, the blood sugar binds to your collagen and makes it makes it, for all practical purposes, turns it into another type of collagen that is not going to be as good as the collagen before. And that's going to also cause wrinkles. And then underneath that, you have the subcutis, which usually contains some blood vessels and some fat as well. But in terms of wrinkling, we really are, and skin aging, really, you have to understand what's going on in the collagen. Of course, in the epidermis is where pigmentation happens. So we are still getting damage to the epidermis, because with blue light, you also are getting some hyperpigmentation in people with darker skin. So understanding types of electromagnetic radiation, and this is sort of how it looks. I mean, if we start at the top, we have radio waves. We have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is sort of between radio and microwaves. Then we have infrared, near infrared, visible light. And then right before we get to ultraviolet light, we have this blue light, high energy visible light, which is another way of saying blue light. And we've spoken about how it actually, I think we spoke about it in the summary, it penetrates deeper than ultraviolet light A. And it's twice as abundant in the sun than ultraviolet light A. So we're getting a decent amount of this in the sun. In fact, we know, in addition to getting it in the sun, with the studies that we know, a long time in front of screens is equal to, potentially 2 hours of blue light from the sun. But what's it there for? I mean, there must be a reason. We've evolved in an environment where almost everything has both positive and negative effects. And it's good because we all need to wake up in the morning. We all need our circadian rhythm to shift into daylight mode. For the skin, daylight mode means that we're sort of, amping up our defenses and getting ready for the day in terms of our overall body. Our melatonin secretion is going to be shut down so that we're ready for the day. And it also turns on all the other circadian rhythms and clocks throughout our body. So some exposure is helpful during the day, especially in the morning when we need to tell our bodies that we need to get going and our organ systems need to get going. But we spoke about how much we get. These studies basically show somewhere in the range of 7 to 10 hours of close screen time, you're going to get the same amount of blue light that you would get in 2 hours of sun exposure. And this was just, honestly, these studies were just including a computer monitor as an example. They also measured things from cell phones as well. But don't forget about these LED lights in our home. They didn't even include that. So this is just for computer screens. We can't forget that LEDs are becoming incredibly popular in new homes. Most of you probably have LED lights in your home that are going to be secreting or are letting out a lot of blue light. Even if it doesn't appear to be blue, they can sort of color it. But actually, if you wear blue blockers at nighttime, like sunglasses that protect against blue light, and you take them off after wearing them, you actually can sort of sense, you can actually see sort of the blue light. And it's pro-oxidative. We spoke about that, didn't we? We spoke about how it creates these reactive oxygen species that need, and remember that oxidative, we know antioxidants. This is pro-oxidative. So it's creating this oxidative stress. It's creating this stress that needs to be resolved by antioxidants. UVA goes down pretty deep into the dermis, but the blue light goes even deeper. And we spoke about all those critical things that are happening in the dermis. It's also pro-oxidative. Doesn't lead to melanin. In other words, when you're in the UVB, you tend to get some protection, the little bit of tanning that's going to protect your DNA. With UVA, even though it's pro-oxidative and causes wrinkling because it's getting down into those deeper parts of the skin, unfortunately, it's causing damage without sort of natural feedback. A lot of the sunbeds, the tanning beds were using UVA. UVB, as we said, is a direct inducer of skin cancer because it's not penetrating as much. And UVC hardly penetrates at all, but also is a direct inducer of skin cancer as well. All right, so we spoke a little bit. Now we understand sort of the electromagnetic spectrum. And by the way, obviously, all of these have some sort of minute biological effect. Some people think that Wi-Fi has biological effects. And it is reasonable to assume that if all of these things have effects, and these are, of course, infrared's penetrating deeper, and microwaves are essentially going through you, as are Wi-Fi and radio waves, it's unreasonable to expect that they don't have any biological function. So science will take some time to try to figure out what the biological effects are of these other types of electromagnetic radiation, but just something I wanted to mention. So what is oxidative stress? So oxidative stress is defined, quote, as a disturbance in the balance between reactive oxygen species, remember we spoke about that, that's that stress that's created, and antioxidant defenses. And I spoke about this as well, that light has to hit something. It's sort of like a pinball, playing pinball. Remember, you hit the flipper, and it goes up into the pinball machine, and it hits a bumper and activates the light. Now, in this case, that activation of light is a form of stress and damage. And we spoke about how in UVB, the light hits the DNA directly. And we spoke about these before, about what it's actually hitting and why it's causing different types of damage. Now, these reactive oxygen species are there. They actually signal normal things going on. In other words, the generation of these can provoke damage to various parts of the cell and ultimately disrupts normal physiology. And this imbalance between the production of this stress and the antioxidant defenses, that's what basically causes a variety of diseases. In other words, you overload the system and damage takes place. And we spoke about the low-level, sort of flying under the radar inflammation that is happening with blue light. We spoke about blue light as twice as abundant in the sun. And in one study from a Dr. Nakashima said blue light would be expected to contribute to skin aging not by overwhelming cellular antioxidant defenses, but by continuously producing low levels of radicals that, however rarely, escape these defenses to cause permanent DNA damage. Several lines of evidence suggest blue light-mediated superoxide production might contribute significantly to skin aging and carcinogenesis, creating cancer. In other words, what he's basically saying here is what we've spoken about already before, which is that unless you were getting an enormous dose, which you're not getting, but you're getting exposed chronically over a long period of time because of screens, that you're getting this low-level inflammation that ultimately is going to cause skin aging and some damage. And I'm going to show you a chart at the very end that really explains how this works. We spoke about that already, that it's flavin that absorbs this blue light. All right, we're getting near the end, and we spoke a little bit about the circadian rhythm. And really, nighttime is for repair. Your skin actually shifts into a mode of repair, just like your gut shifts into a mode of repair when you're not eating, and that's why things like intermittent fasting, where you give your gut time to sort of balance out its circadian rhythm, can have some profound effects on your overall health. With blue light, unfortunately, your skin can't repair itself each day, and you accumulate more and more damage, just like you would if you stayed awake night after night. And this is going to affect your barrier function, which is ultimately going to affect the way your skin appears, and it's just not going to look as well as it normally would. It's going to look rougher. It's not going to be as vibrant looking as well. But your skin shifts into protection mode for the daytime. And in order for it to be in its optimal state, it needs to have gone through its repair process. And this reactive oxygen species system, which we spoke about at length, and the circadian system interact in ways that we're still learning about. That's why in the summary, I sort of put here, I put here this sort of connection, this relationship between reactive oxygen species and circadian rhythms. In other words, we're just learning about how these things interact. They interact. The human body is this remarkably delicate symphony of things going on. And we're just now trying to understand how this system that is reacting effectively or not, depending on your skin, and the circadian system, how they interact. We're still learning about that. One journal article said excessive reactive oxygen species and or dysregulation of antioxidant systems and circadian rhythms can cause critical errors in maintaining proper barrier function and skin health, as well as overall homeostasis. In other words, just what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we're dealing with two very delicate systems that, unfortunately, now we understand how blue light interferes with both of these systems. It really is a cause of concern. And unfortunately, modern day life is unfortunately necessitating us to make decisions in our life to be able to account for these things. And we do that, as I said above, by, just like I said up here, by reducing, replacing, and restoring. And that is really, we need to do this because we are being insulted, injured in ways that are new. and something that we really need to be cautious of and to do something about. It's not something that we can say that we are protecting ourselves against the sun and all these sorts of, using various types of things on our skin and eating well. But all the while, there is this low-level inflammation if you're working on your computer all day and on your phone and under LED lights that is causing real damage to your skin. And it's something that you should really think about doing something about. So that is my talk. I wanted to end with some images that I particularly like. Let's blow this up a little bit. So this is just twins. Twin on the left has a history of more sun exposure and looks older. I just wanted to show you, how sort of a dermatologist would look at this. If you look at the forehead of the person on the left, enormous amount of increased skin lines, and then I would want you to focus on the skin around the mouth. Again, you see downturning of the corners of the mouth, which is from collagen destruction, as well as the lines on the upper lip and around the mouth. This is what you see, and it causes an enormous amount of aging. Here's another one. Studies of identical twins. The twin on the left smokes and has a history of more sun exposure, resulting in an older appearance. And in this case, there's a whole host of things, from pigmentation, lots of increased pigmentation on the left. Again, pay attention to around the mouth. And, in this case, the eyes are dramatically different. But always take a look at sort of the plumpness of the skin. Her skin on the right looks like it's higher up almost. In other words, on the left, you could see things sort of pulling down a little bit just to show aging. This chart I happen to like. Hope it doesn't scare you, but it really shouldn't, because remember we spoke about how UVB directly hits the DNA. Look at that. Just hits the DNA, causes damage to the DNA, which if not repaired causes cancer. Now, UVA is not hitting the DNA, but because of these oxygen species that we've spoken about, unfortunately, that secondarily can cause damage to the DNA. So the damage from UVA is very different from the damage to UVB, but both can cause DNA damage as a result of these reactive oxygen species. In addition to the fact that we spoke about, these same oxygen species are going to degrade the infrastructure, the scaffolding of your skin. Now with blue light, you're also getting reactive oxygen species, which ultimately is going to cause, can cause damage to the DNA. But we've spoken quite a bit about how these reactive oxygen species are causing aging. But this diagram is basically showing how there can be secondary effects that can lead to actual DNA damage. The final chart that I wanted to show you is just looking at where the ultraviolet light A and ultraviolet light B, we spoke about how these are really next to each other in the electromagnetic spectrum. Sunscreen is at the proper amount is this particular line, and you can see that you're not really getting any protection here. It drops down, and for people, this is the proper application of sunscreen, which almost nobody does. You really have to put on an enormous amount of sunscreen to get what they are studying. This is more like what people get. You can see it drops off a lot quicker, a lot quicker. Sunlight, of course, covers the entire spectrum here. Remember we spoke about flavin, right? So you can see that, and how these peaks here over UVA and UVB show that this is where it's being absorbed. And then we have eye sensitivity. And one thing that's interesting about eye sensitivity, retinal sensitivity, that we briefly touched on, is that your lens actually filters out almost essentially the ultraviolet light. So what's left over is the blue light, which leads a lot of people myself included, to think that in probably 10 to 20 years, there's going to be an epidemic of early onset macular degeneration as a result of all this blue light. So there are real reasons to wear blue light protection in the evening, but again, you need a little bit of blue light to hit your retina in the morning to wake you up, to reset your system. The question is how much is too much? So dose always makes the poison. And if we're in the home all day long under LED lights and computer screens and cell phones, this is going to cause retinal damage. Of course, we've spoken at length for the last 20 minutes or so about how it damages the skin. So I hope that provides a little bit of context for understanding not just blue light's effect on overall health, but its real damaging effects on the skin. And I hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested, leave your comments below. If you're interested in more things like this, leave a comment below. And of course, always hit the button to subscribe so you can be notified of new videos. And also wanted to remind you that every Wednesday night we have Wednesday Night Live, which is my live class every Wednesday night. And you can follow the link below to sign up for that particular class that I hold every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope everyone does well, stays well, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Goodbye.